not have, oh yeah, that's right. Thank you, Lindsay. So we always record the session, and the reason we record the sessions is in order to spread the message about safety in every single of your organization. So thank you for being here today. If you want to ask questions, please feel free to just pitch in any experiences, any knowledge that you want us to have. I don't mind if you interrupt. This is an interactive session whenever you want to make it interactive. But also, at the end of the session, when I stop the recording, you can also ask me other sessions or put it in the chat. Just put all your questions in the chat and I'll get to them. And of course, it's impossible to know everything. If I don't know something, which happens often, I will look up the answer for you and we will make sure we answer it, send you an email, etc. And many times it has happened that some of you get questions right after the class and you send Lindsay an email or me and she forwards it. So we will get your questions answered. Okay, so Cal OSHA does not have, if you Google it, you will not find the Cal OSHA Citations 2022. So I looked up, and it's so interesting, I called consultation. For those of you that do not know what consultation is, California OSHA in California, has a consultation and an enforcement department. Enforcement are the ones that go out and actually visit every single one of your organizations. They do have methods to get to you and priorities. So they do target those that are considered high hazard, and a lot of healthcare is considered high hazard because of the types of experience modification rates that you guys have. And that means the more injuries you have, the more your experience modification rate will be. And above 1.25, Cal OSHA will input you in this list that gets names picked out randomly. Another way you're going to get OSHA on your site is by complaints, right? Imminent danger. And they will prioritize anytime they feel that complaint has to do with something serious, something that could cause serious injury or illness to a worker. So today we got to talk about this list because I want you guys to focus on taking a look at your organizations, looking around, opening your eyes, and using the information that we get out of today's webinar and prioritize. Because with safety, we get a little overwhelmed many times. There are hundreds and thousands of pages of regulations that you will not have any time to read. So why not focus on those that are most troublesome to organizations? That's number one. And number two, I want to give you practical ways. I've always been all about giving you guys practical ways to take safety to the workplace because let's say you have a requirement to do 7 steps. For example, with ladder training, you are supposed with portable ladder training in the construction and general industry. And when I say general industry, it's everybody else outside of construction, right? Although there's 4 groups really for the regulations in regards to safety. But let's just say any organization, whenever you have employees, you must make sure that you do safety for them. And portable ladders, for example, which will be in your list today, has a requirement for a 7-step training in California. And many times you're like, you look at the website, you look at the e-tool that Cal OSHA has put out there for you, and you're thinking, I don't have time for this. Who has time to discuss each of these topics? Is going to take me like half a day. And sometimes if you really are good at what you're doing, it could take you that long or even longer. You know, you can always talk a lot about a topic in depth that it will take you many, many hours. But I want to make it practical. And for ladder safety, for example, you could add that to your powwows, your meetings every Monday morning, your production meetings, and add one of each of those 7 steps for portable ladder for each Monday, for example. And guess what? After 7 Mondays of you having a production meeting, voila, you have done portable ladder compliant training with Cal OSHA regulations. So let's stop seeing it such as an impossible task and let's start tweaking things here and there. I know it's a lot to do. I've been out there. Just last week, I went to 2 companies and did training for the workforce. And it can get overwhelming because Cal OSHA wants to see documentation of training. So take pictures while you're doing the training with your training person in front of the group of workers, you know, with their uniforms on and doing PPE training, doing the exercise with the gloves and the chemicals. Take pictures, submit a good roster. I will show you a sample roster that I use, because my sample roster will always include the language you discuss the topic, an outline of the topic discussed, and the time you start the training and the time you end the training. If you don't put a start time and an end time, well, for how long did you talk about this topic? You know, some topics are much more complex than others. Did you do it 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours? How long? And who did the training? Have that trainer put their name, their signature, because maybe you have the wrong person talking about bloodborne pathogens. Maybe you have the wrong person talking about machine guarding and lockout, tagout. So that was a long introduction, but it's always, you know, little pieces of good practical information for you guys. It's got to be practical, otherwise we're not going to get to do it, right? So just remember that my information is on the screen. We are all about safety. The Southern Education Research Center wants to bring this to you. These are free, so please get the people in your team to come every first Friday of the month and log on for this live webinar. If you need 10-hour or 30-hour classes where I am authorized to provide you guys with your Department of Labor OSHA card, let us know and we will customize it. Lindsay can help us organize a training for your company. So I talked to consultation. That's what I said in the beginning. No, I talked to consultation and I said, hey, I need a list of your top Cal OSHA citations for 2022. And they, scratched their heads and looked everywhere, and there is no such a list. You've got to look in one of our resources and some of the, other awesome people that help us out with this thing. And one of those is State Fund. So I will show you what State Fund has gathered for us. And then I will show you the 2022 top most cited for the nation, which, by the way, for the nation, they're always the same. And it'll help you to take a look at both, because those are the issues that most inspectors focus on. It's in their minds. They know they're going to find a lot to cite you on with this thing. So COVID changed some of these issues. It brought respiratory protection way up. But for the most part, this top 10 cited list stays the same. But I do want to enumerate the top 10 most cited. Then I want to talk a lot about some real life key scenarios and, 2 practical solutions for your organization. And I already talked about one, which is, training. How do you training of a 7-point, requirement by OSHA? How do you do that when you have to meet production deadlines? And we were talking about that earlier. And list resources for the safety manager in order to prioritize safety issues at their specific locations. So you must have resources. You must prioritize. Like I said, use this list and let it click or turn on the light in your head and say, ooh, we really have a lot of this. We need to make sure we go in our safety walkthroughs and fix this now. And it's part of what we do with this safety trainings, right? And I do have a couple, I don't know if these are questions. Yeah, thank you. I do have somebody in the chat saying thank you for the sessions. Yes, like I said, Lindsay will help us out to put together a cost for training sessions, whatever you need, online or in person. Full prevention training will required initially, and when new full hazards are introduced to the workplace. That's a great question, Angel. I will check on that, but I know it is recommended annually, okay? And when you say fall prevention, Angel, are we talking about you have people who are going to wear harnesses, they have personal fall protection, and you have to talk about the hazards and how to use the equipment. So most of the time, Cal OSHA will ask for documented training within the last year. So although many of these standards that we're going to discuss today, the top 10 most cited, do not require, and listen to this, Angel, they do not require annual training. A lot of them don't, but many of them do. You have to know the regulation or go to the regulation for that. They just say, for example, hazard communication, just train them when you know that you have introduced chemicals at the workplace, and anytime you have additional chemicals added to the workplace. Okay. The thing is, if OSHA goes to your facility because of injury with chemical, they're going to ask for the most recent training. So don't let it be 10 years ago, because number one, you will not even find that roster for training. So for most of the important issues on this top 10 most cited list, I highly recommend you do annual training, annual refresher training, and you make sure you have it in your curriculum for your yearly training. All right, so excellent question. What is happening in California? We had 462 deaths in 2022. I do not have the 2022 fiscal year total of fatal injuries, but every single year we go from 380, 360 to 400, 450, about the same number. That's more than 1.5 people, workers in California that continue to die because of on-the-job injuries. And it's interesting because you get to see that a lot of these things happen on the road, transportation incidents, exposure to harmful substances or environments. That's chemical safety is the next. Violence and other injuries by persons or animals, 87. So use this information to help you get what you need, meaning, hey, I do have a lot of company vehicles. Let's make sure we have a fleet safety policy. So use information I'm showing you here to prioritize, right? So here we have an example, for example, of an inspection. City of Sacramento was inspected, so cities also get inspected, right? The address, City of Sacramento, 701 College Town, blah, blah, blah. And then they tell you whether or not this was because of an emphasis program. So it is a national emphasis program, a local government entity, and they do get cited because they do have certain emphasis programs where they pick you and they go out there and they start citing. Now, I put this here just because once you click, by the way, you can research how many citations or the history that you have with OSHA when you go to OSHA.gov, because you can find it by name of establishment in the OSHA.gov site. And then you'll find out how many years in a row, how many times last year you were visited by OSHA, Cal-OSHA, and how much did that cost, or if something is still pending. Gives you also what were the standards that were violated. And the interesting part here is that the amounts may not seem very large. Of course, some of them maybe because of some regulatory issues, paperwork, documentation that you didn't have. That's the small numbers. And the big numbers had to do with serious violations, right? And so what we want to do is avoid paying these violation citations penalties. We want to make sure that if OSHA gets to a workplace, they can find that we have the information that will get us home penalty free. Okay, so here it is, our list for the top 10 Cal-OSHA citations. And number one is the Injury and Illness Prevention Program. So make note, take notes. The IIPP. Some of you are like, oh yeah, that program. Every organization in California is required to have an injury and illness prevention program. It's a written document that says, hey, this is how we promise to keep people safe at work. And remember, this is a state fund. This is state fund list, which is a great resource because there's nothing on the Cal-OSHA website for top 10 most cited. The second one is the heat illness prevention, and that's because Cal-OSHA did place an emphasis on going out there. We have an emphasis program that every summer, no matter where these inspectors are from California, they will pull them from any other activities and send them out to outdoor places of employment to check on your heat illness prevention protocols. The heat illness prevention program is supposed to be at each of your sites where you have workers doing work outdoors. So the need for them to have water, the need for replenishment procedures, the need, when I say replenishment, it means how often do you refill those jugs of water? How do they get to have water right next to them, readily available, to encourage them, because that's what the regulation says. So very important. That's number two. Number three, reporting fatalities and serious injuries. This one was all of this sudden appears during the years of the pandemic as one of the top most cited here in California, because with COVID-19, we saw a lot of hospitalizations, which is considered serious injury or illness in the definition, the actual legal definition for whenever a person gets injured, and if they get admitted to the hospital, the moment they get admitted, that's if it occurred on the job and they became admitted at the hospital, you need to pick up the phone and call Cal-OSHA enforcement site. You need to know the phone number for your district office. And what happened was with COVID, a lot of these issues of serious injury or illness of a person being admitted because of COVID at work, had to be at work, not just that they contracted it from a party over the weekend. No, at work. And you forgot to pick up the phone and call. And happen a lot with all sorts of industry, restaurants, healthcare, etc. Right? So that's why this one is number 3, number 3. And then number 4 is hazard communication. This one is always there nationwide. So make a quick pause here. The first 3 that I just mentioned do not appear in the nationwide OSHA top 10 most cited. Why? Because the Injury and Illness Prevention Program is particular of California employers. And the second one, which was heat illness, second one, heat illness, is very particular to us because we have an emphasis program. And the number 3, the actually reporting of serious injury and illness, is also a California mandated. Nationwide is a little bit different, but we do have that requirement to call the moment they become inpatient hospitalized. Now, starting number 4, you have hazard communication, which always appears in our list and the list for our nation's top 10 most cited. Hazard communication has to do with chemical safety, which, by the way, guys, make a note. Next week, we have a class. Lindsay, what's the class that we have next week? Is hazard communication, right?
Hazard communication next Wednesday and Thursday.
Okay. Right. So don't forget, what are the times, please?
8 a.m. to 12 p.m. So 8 hours in total.
So guys, please make sure that you come on board. We do have already several people that has registered, so the class has been confirmed. If you have, I just talked to a manager at a different facility who's moving all of his product to a new warehouse. And they were very interested in this class because they're a brewery and they do handle chemicals and they do have issues of confined spaces and they have highly pressurized lines, etc. So if that's you, chemical safety, come on board next week. That's number 4. Most cited in California, and it always goes to number 2 or number 5 in our nation. And this is because every time they visit you, they know they're going to find issues with your chemical safety. And the first one is you do not have a written program that says how you do safety in regards to chemicals at the workplace. They also look for your safety data sheets. Have you ever seen those things? Safety data sheet books are important to have on site, readily available for workers. And what happens most often is that we do not pay attention and we forget to update those books. And we also forget to ensure that the workers know how to use it. Because during training, we should take a copy of the safety data sheets and show it to them. Let me give you a good example of this. So just a moment here. I need to erase just some information. I'm going to show you some good here. This is some pictures that I took last week. You're going to like them. You're going to go, oh my God. Okay, it's fine. It's perfectly fine. Why? Because what I want you to do is I want you to go back out to your floors and see, oh my God, this is me. I can't even believe it, right? So if you have these issues going on, hold on, what am I doing here wrong? I'm going to show you some pictures of what's going on. Okay. New share. So no IIPP for this particular company that I visited, no IIPP. Isn't that number 1 top most cited? They didn't have it. They didn't remember when they had it last. So I rated it what? 3, poor, because they couldn't even find it. I show up at your workplace. I take pictures of your conditions and what's going on happening. Ooh, okay. So we took a look at their emergency eye wash stations, which is not one of the top most cited, but there's so many issues. This one wasn't even working because the plumbing has, it's old and the water was dirty. So they just put it out of service without even, no sign that it's out of service. This emergency shower has no way to drain anything, so it's gonna make a puddle if you try to use it. Plus, it's obstructed by a ton of stuff, a ladder, a drum, things on the floor. No one can get to that emergency shower in time to get those chemicals washed off. You can see there's no bump testing of this eye wash station, which is mandated at least every 30 days, but manufacturers will always ask you to do it weekly. Fire extinguishers that you do not even take a look at it. And all of this, you're thinking, why is she talking about this if it's not in the top 10 most cited? When we talk about hazard communication and chemical safety, your safety data sheets will always include requirements for these things. A requirement to have an actual eye wash station within 10 seconds of travel from wherever the injurious materials are located. So all of these guys are part of what's going on in your facilities. You know, some of these cylinders were stored appropriately, although I had an issue with how much traffic and forklifts were going on by that area. But some of the outside or outdoor cylinders were not secured. Also inside the building, non-secured cylinders. That's all part of your hazard communication program, teaching people about the safety of the chemicals that they deal with. I found a lot of plastic cans with fuel, gas, or gasoline or diesel. And the thing with gasoline and diesel is that they have any flammable or combustible liquid needs to be inside safety cans with flame arresters, like the little one that I have pointed here in this picture, picture number 8. And I also have flammable cabinets where I find that people use them for storage. Closets, if you will. They even put their jackets inside as they arrive in the morning.
There's a question, Alba. Someone asked, do you see most places have both eye washes and safety showers, or do you see places that only have eye washes?
So the answer to the question is depending on the process. You're required to have these in areas of work. So you could have them together or you can have them separate. Most of the time I find them together because usually what happens is the process, let's say you're cleaning parts, there's the danger for this chemical to splash the eyes of the worker. So you have to have a safety emergency eye wash station. But if the process, it's likely to produce splashes to the body, to large areas of the skin because of the amount of chemicals at that site and the type of procedure or task being done, and you have to have the emergency eye wash within 10 seconds of travel because there's that possibility of your skin, clothing being drenched with this chemical, then you have to have both right there. Very good question, you guys. So this has to do with chemical safety. You see now why there is an issue where people get cited with chemical safety. For us is number 4, but nationwide for 2022 was number 5. I'm sorry, number 5 for 2022 hazard communication. So it's always making the top 10, and now you can see why it's so important. This is what I mean when I say, guys, you need to have safety data sheets available to workers. These things need to be hanging on the wall right next to where they do the job. And these need to be everywhere for you guys that are in nursing, healthcare, any facility that handles chemicals. All of us, we all handle chemicals. So you don't have to have these huge books covering the walls. Just one book per department with the chemical safety data sheets that belong or that are used at that department only. You can have a 5 books if you wish in headquarters, and you can have them only electronically, which is what most of you are doing, like a service. You pay a monthly fee for a service that keeps all your safety data sheets in one location. The key to that is to teach workers how to access the electronic copy. And if you're not going to take the time to tell them how to access the electronic copy, by all means, buy them one of these on the screen. So these are why these issues continue to come back up as most cited. Does that make sense? Okay. So, and I had a ton of more pictures, but it's good to show you real life examples and then going back and forth to our actual presentation. Okay. So the next one after hazard communication is aerosol transmissible diseases. And then the next, well, and you may be thinking, what's aerosol transmissible disease? Aerosol transmissible diseases has to do with any and all uh, diseases that can be transmitted by air, right? But there's so much more to it. It has to do with occupational exposure, because you could think, oh, well, we're all exposed. With COVID, this was a very frequent question. The thing is, we're talking about occupational exposure. If you are one of those workers that is exposed more than the regular public, let's say you are in healthcare, how much more are you exposed to COVID than me, that most of the time I work from home, let's say? Well, obviously, my occupational exposure is not there, but for healthcare, it would be there to viruses and transmissible diseases that there's a whole list in Appendix A of this regulation. So that's why we have top 5. And it's also because the pandemic brought this issue and put it in our top 10 most cited. Healthcare, nursing facilities, skilled nursing facilities for the elderly, all of those were frequently cited because of a lack of an aerosol transmissible disease exposure control program, because there are some requirements about the actual exposure control program and what it needs to have. And then you see on the screen here that there's something about tuberculosis, because tuberculosis is a bacteria that is also something that stays in the air when someone has active tuberculosis. And when they have it, they're depending on the air changes in the room, it'll take a while for TB bacterium to actually be cleared out. So there are some requirements, but it's not just all about tuberculosis. There's other aerosol transmissible diseases on the OSHA regulation that made the list. The next one is respiratory protection. And of course, it's in our list as top 10 most cited for California and also for our nation, because COVID brought it to one of the first places. So here in California, it's number 6, but for 2022, I believe is number 2 in general industry. And it's because during COVID, for a lot of these procedures that generate aerosols, when a person coughs, that's an aerosol. You sneeze, that you generate aerosols. Even when we talk, sing, etc., we generate aerosols. But there are some procedures in healthcare that on purpose generate those aerosols. And if that happens, the worker needs to be wearing a respirator. And so that's why respiratory protection in California made the top 10, and it brought it a little higher on the list. Fire extinguishers. Didn't I just show you how I find this as the most common thing that is lacking compliance at your places of employment, your organizations?
Sorry, do you mind zooming out a little bit? It's really close to this.
I'm sorry. Woo. Sorry about that.
I think a little more. We're just seeing part of it's pretty zoomed in. Okay. Okay,
Sorry.
that's better.
I just kept talking without, for some reason I did that. So sorry.
No problem.
Okay. Fire extinguishers, you saw it in my example pictures, but today, right now, when you walk out of your office, take a look at any extinguisher around your facility, and you will find that the tag does not have a monthly inspection on it. And it has room for a monthly inspection documentation. You put the month and the person who did the visual inspection. It takes a few seconds where you're just checking that the arrow is in the green, that the plastic tie is intact, that the actual hose is not cracked or showing damage, wear and tear, and that the bottle is readily available, upright, mounted, etc. So no wonder, and that's a very, very common citation. Number 8, emergency eye washes and showers. And we saw why. I showed you one of the most common is that they're obstructed. People can't get to the emergency equipment. And the requirements are known to safety managers. 10-second travel from that or task where the injurious corrosive materials are located at and the workers are working with them. And then manufacturers will be very good at telling you what they want you to do with their equipment. How often should you bump test them? How to bump test them to make sure how many seconds should you let the water run? How hot should the water be? How cold? It's got a requirement for tepid water, right? So that it doesn't burn the eye, so it doesn't burn the skin, doesn't make the issue worse. If you're going to buy a portable eye wash station, that's perfectly fine. Just make sure you change the water every 6 months and you put the solution to keep the water free of germs, because you don't want to put water that is going to create an issue of bacteria in the eye, and now you have an injury with bacteria. It's just all bad. So emergency eye washes and showers. Document, please document that you are actually inspecting those emergency equipment. And make sure you do not put any, tell the guys, don't store things, because with electrical equipment, emergency showers, eye wash equipment, and extinguishers, I find it that people see an opening there and they start storing, piling up boxes, debris, ladders, bags, because it's an area that needs to be free of obstructions. And for some reason, we have this bad habit of just filling out empty spaces, right? That's one of the main things for the commonly most cited, that we don't have good housekeeping rules, and we do not do enough safety walkthroughs where we can find these issues. Because if you walked the floor, like I said today, right now, as you come out of your office, just go and take a look at your extinguishers, see if there's anyone who's doing a visual inspection. Number 9 is industrial trucks, and industrial trucks has to do with any powered industrial truck, not, for example, your pallet jacks that are manually operated. Those are outside of this requirement, but anything that is a powered industrial truck, so heavy machinery and equipment to move dirt or earth moving equipment, and your regular common forklifts are included here. And so just yesterday, I had a near miss, and it's not really a near miss. In this organization, they call it near miss if there's no injury, but there was property damage. So as you know, I'd like to call those incidents, because it did happen. There was property damage and there could have been injuries. So after you do your 5Y or you do your incident investigation, we determined that the issue was the lack of a refresher training for workers, because some of them have gone almost 4 years without a refresher training, and it's required. The regulation says every 3 years, you have to have certification of training. And that means either a wallet size that they can carry around as they hop on that forklift, or that you keep a separate record of who has been trained, hands-on and classroom training. By the way, you do not need to repeat the classroom training every 3 years, but unless you're adding new workers and you want them to receive training, make sure you do the 2-part training. But the hands-on is required every 3 years to, for sure, take place, and every single operator of a forklift has to take that class and that recertification. Every time you have an incident, you have to do the refresher training as well. And no wonder this is making the list nationwide and also for California, powered industrial trucks. There's so much about the safe operating rules for industrial trucks is a poster that needs to be posted near the area where forklifts are driven. And I find that many of you don't even know it exists. So if you have equipment, power industrial trucks that move around to move material, merchandise, etc., you must make sure that you have this poster on your screen. So if you don't have it posted on the bulletin board of your warehouse, make sure that if you have binders, some of you have binders that your forklift drivers carry with them, well, add it there. The point is, OSHA will go out there and make sure that this poster is available. Okay, what else? We are finishing our list. The last one would be the control of hazard energy lockout tagout. And mind you, this is not by order of severity, but by the amount of citations, inspections, and penalties, right? So how many citations of control of hazardous energy lockout tagout? So it took last place in this list, but that doesn't mean it's one of those, because what I find is that the list topmost cited by the numbers of companies and the number of citations in California has nothing to do with the severity of the hazard, right? If you have issues as listed here, you have to make a list of priority. So for lockout tagout, any machinery, and we did this probably in September, I remember, during our free webinar, this one. We talked about an example of someone who had a temporary worker, and this temporary worker was asked to help unjam a machine. It was a bucket elevator that had debris and they had to, they were using shovels in their hands to get it out, but they did not do proper lockout tagout. And for those of you that do not know what that is, that means anytime you're going to unjam, repair, or service any machine or equipment at your facility, you must apply a step-by-step procedure for safety, where you will isolate the energy that could harm the worker who is performing the unjamming or the servicing, etc. So in this case, they should go step one, making sure that they isolated the electricity, going, putting their locks to the actual disconnect switch. There is special hardware in places where this hardware needs to be put in. And then making sure that they tell people around the area that the procedure is going to take place, and that the authorized employee, that's the person who's going to be doing the unjamming, servicing, etc., is going to put his or her lock with his tag. Many times this has a picture of themselves saying, hey, I'm fixing this machine and do not touch it. Do not remove this lock because you will kill me or hurt me, right? And those are things that allow for you to continue to have an awareness, and people need to know about this top 10 most cited, because these are also things that cause injury and death. Now, if I take you to my top 10 most cited nationwide, you're going to see that you won't have some of the 1, 2, 3, and you won't have aerosol transmissible disease either, because the aerosol transmissible disease standard is particular California. We have some extra or different regulations, which is fine. It's just what it is. I want to see if you guys are seeing my, yes, now you're seeing the most frequently cited for 2022, fiscal year 2022 in general industry by OSHA. So this is nationwide. As much as we visited what's happening or going on in California, now we're going to see what's happening in general industry nationwide. Okay, it starts with machine guarding. Wait, overall. No. This is, give me a quick second. And it gives you, I love that they sent me this. So because I'm an authorized outreach trainer, I get these emails from the OSHA Training Institute, and they were so kind to send us this information. And once again, you will see that you have the same issues here, right? So you have machine guarding, right, as top, as number one. Machine guarding has to do with the types of guards at the point of operation where machines have sprockets, moving parts, gears, or like the bucket that I told you that has an elevator bucket where product is being taken up. So it's moving parts that could seriously injure a person if they get too close to the point of operation. Hazard communication, you saw some examples, some pictures. And then the first thing, the most cited, is that not having that written program. And then number two is not providing information and training. It's so common, and you ask workers, they have no idea what those safety data sheets are. And then today, it's a homework and to do. I want you to go out there and take a look at a safety data sheet, any of them. It could be for isopropyl alcohol. Take a look at that safety data sheet and find things that you didn't even know about isopropyl alcohol, right? How to clean up a spill. What kind of fire extinguisher media should you be using? That's element number 5 of that safety data sheet. So there's very valuable information. What happens if you have a small spill or a large spill? What happens if it drenches your clothing? What happens if it splashes your eyes? For any chemicals, all that information is contained within this safety data sheet, and we fail to teach workers. That would be number 3 down the list. The next one would be respirators. And like we said, this is brought from the bottom of our list up to some of the top most cited, because respirators now are mandated during COVID, and also voluntarily offered to workers with weak immune systems, right? And although the emergency standard changed in California and we don't have to have a separate COVID-19 program, we still have to do basically everything that they were requiring us to do with that emergency standard. The next one, oh yes, and I see here a differentiation on shall provide medical evaluation. So many times employers get someone to go on site and tell us, the employer, what type of respirator is the appropriate respirator for the workers, the cartridges, the change out schedule. They help you a lot. They even take measurements to see what's the level of the contaminant in the breathing zone of the worker. But then we forget to do medical evaluations, which is a requirement within the respiratory protection program. For those of you utilizing PAPRs, the powered air purifying respirators, it's mandated you have a medical evaluation. It is mandated. So basically for anything above an N95 that is required and not voluntary, you must have medical evaluations and fit testing every year. The fit testing is important, can be quantitative or qualitative, but it has to do with the fact that our faces change, we gain weight, we lose weight, and we need to know that the make and model that we're using is a good one. That's why it appears double on our list. One, because we failed to provide that medical evaluation to make sure that the worker is okay to wear a respirator, that he's not claustrophobic, that he's not going to suffer because his lung capacity is not enough to wear a respirator. That's number one. And number two is that we fail to ensure that we are tested every year, fit tested to wear the appropriate make and model. The next one is lockout tagout, which we saw California also has it as number 10. We don't have procedures developed. What does that mean? That I find that it's very common for companies to have locks and tags and the actual lockout tagout station mounted on the wall. And so the maintenance guy goes out there and grabs the locks and they do a good job at following that procedure. But they don't have a different procedure for each machine or equipment that they service. They kind of have like a one fits all, and they have their actual hardware and station on the wall, but they don't have procedures for the different machines that they have. And a different procedures needs to be developed for each of these machines, unless, and there's an exception, but it has to do with how similar these machines are. The next one, it's power industrial trucks, and I talked a little bit about it. Competency training. So one of the key things that I want you to know is that if you do not document something, it never happened. So when I say I want to give you practical tips, I said to you guys in the beginning, many times these trainings take a while to be compliant, to actually do what the law states. And I gave you guys the example of portable ladders. For portable ladder training in California, you have a 7-step training program that needs to take place, and it's all in the OSHA e-tool. And if you fail to do that, OSHA will again slap your hand or hand you a citation for a violation of the standard for not having compliant training, right? And you could raise your hands and say, there are so many regulations and they all have requirements for training. I can't do this. Versus, you know what, let's make it work. Every single time we have a production meeting, or every single quarter, or every single, whatever you're going to do, let's add in our agenda step number 1 of the portable ladder training. And next Monday, we'll do a step 2. And next Monday, 7 Mondays go by and you have complied, you have done what is required for portable ladder safety training. So there are ways to do it without overwhelming your workforce. Actually, short bursts of training are much more effective than long sessions. So think about that.
Alba, there's a question. Medical evaluations are only once unless the worker reports a physical change.
Yes. So medical evaluations are to render the employee okay to wear a respirator. And sometimes the doctor will ask to have that person reevaluated next year or in 6 months, because the doctors will sometimes authorize a person to wear a respirator. So the medical evaluation is actually a questionnaire. So let me start right there. It's actually a questionnaire. You don't even have to see a doctor. That questionnaire is answered by the employee and it gets sent to a medical provider. The medical provider is going to review those questions and deem the person okay to wear a respirator or not. What happens many times is they'll go, this answer is a little iffy. I would like to see this employee in person. And they'll call you and get that employee to make an appointment with the provider. And then the provider can say, okay, you know what? Let's go ahead and authorize you to do this only 2 hours a day. Or let's go ahead and authorize you to do this, but I need to see you in 3 months to see how you're doing. So it may be more than once, but yes, the medical evaluations are just before they start wearing the respirator. Very good. Awesome, guys. Awesome. So what else do we have here? Which is thank you about the zooming. These numbers reflect citations for the state of California. So the ones that I have on the screen right now for Mr. Ortega or Miss Ortega, Ian, it's a nice name. Everybody has wonderful names here. The numbers of citations right now on the screen are nationwide. So how many of those refer to this particular standard? Okay, so those are the tiny numbers after the blue colored bar, but not for the state of California. This is nationwide. Because like I said, for California, I found a list by state fund, but California does not have a site or a way to tell you, the California site, the Cal OSHA site does not have these numbers. So when you go to the actual OSHA.gov, they do have numbers of how many citations, but not per standard, not as detailed as here, okay? But there is some more information about how many specific citations per each of these hazards of, cited violations. I requested that information from Cal OSHA consultation, and they do not put out these numbers because Cal OSHA has them. So if you want something in specific, you let me know. But the number here is nationwide. Okay, so we saw number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6 is hazardous energy control procedures. It has to do with lockout, tagout. We don't have procedures developed for each machine or piece of equipment. The next one, power industrial trucks. Then machine guarding, point of operation, and that's wherever the guard needs to be in place. Many times we remove it to work faster, or an incident occurs because an employee gets cut at the point of operation. Respirators again appears here as most cited because the employer did not establish a written respiratory program. That happens often where you see people wearing respirators and you ask the employer where is the written program, and they don't have it. So that's why it appears on the list. And the last one, safety data sheets not readily available. And that is part of the hazard communication requirements. So voila, there is your list. It's not the same as in California because we said we have the mandated IIPP, Injury and Illness Prevention Program. And that is always the first document they ask from you if Cal OSHA gets to your organization. So if Cal OSHA gets to your site, no matter if they're there because someone went to the hospital with COVID, an employee went to the hospital with COVID, or because someone fell off the ladder, an employee fell off a ladder and got seriously injured, any serious injury or illness needs to be reported to Cal OSHA, and it brings OSHA to the site. Now, they make a determination as to whether or not to go and visit your site. And most of the time, when it involves something in the top 10 most cited, they'll go out there and inspect, because a ladder, they know this is something that is so common. They want to see what else is out of compliance. But the IIPP is the top most cited in California. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what was up with construction, because we also have construction top 10 most cited list. And that is going to be right here. So let us share that now. Okay, I'm sharing now the top 10 most cited for construction. And you're going to see fall protection as number 1. So fall protection in residential construction, top most cited. Then eye and face protection. Interestingly enough, this eye and face protection, and let me back up a little bit. Fall protection, what does that mean? Well, many times the fall protection itself is not present. There are 2 types of fall protection, passive or active. Passive is your guardrails. Active is putting something on the worker to stop the fall, right? Like your personal fall rest or personal fall protection. When you do this, you have to have training about the hazards and about the equipment. So basically, why are you wearing this PPE? And what are the hazards and how to use the equipment? And they need to know, for example, how to inspect it prior to use. That's why this became number one. Once again, it's actually taken number one 12 years in a row, if I'm not mistaken. Eye and face protection goes from being number 10 to back to the top, etc. Eye and face protection has to do with your safety goggles and safety glasses. Safety glasses are those that are ANSI rated. There's an actually marking on the safety glass. And for some reason, people don't wear them. And that's because you have a weak policy. And that's because you have foremen, managers, and supervisors who do not wear them. So you show up at the metal department, and because no one, your supervisors don't wear it, workers don't wear it. You go to the machine shop or your wood department, where there are saws and any other pieces of machinery that could create the issue of dust particles, metal shavings, wood shavings, etc. And you do not have these readily available. So for my clients, I ask them to place bins full of brand new safety glasses for the workers to use. And then you teach them how to take care of them, right? Not to put them on their heads as if they were some sort of hair decoration, but to wear them on their eyes. I have big issues with people that wear prescription glasses. They don't want to wear their safety glasses. The best way to get them to wear their safety glasses is by getting them prescription safety glasses. Those are expensive. Companies, I urge you, organizations I urge you to see if there's some budget there to get these, a portion of these prescription safety glasses paid by the company. You're not required, but it will bring compliance way up because this is commonly cited. So the trades that you see this a lot in is just framing, roofers, and masons. Masons, this is very common. They don't wear their safety glasses. They don't wear their safety goggles, and they're working with concrete. They're working with cement. They're mixing, etc. And then their eyes get irritated because of cement dust or splashes of concrete. Masons, more than anything. And that's why it takes number 2. Number 3, ladders. Haha, not extended 3 feet above landing. Every time you have an extension ladder, to come off the ladder onto the landing surface, you have to make sure that it is secure, and there's 3 feet of that ladder sticking out beyond that landing surface. And that's because it allows you to grab onto something, right, and step to the side. And there are some devices that they make nowadays where it looks like a fork, where the worker can just grab on and step through, and it extends the 3 feet that you're required to have above landing. That's number 3 for ladders. Then you have fall protection training for those exposed to fall hazards. So that means that you forget, number 1 is you do not have fall protection for residential construction workers, but number 4 is you forget to train them. You do not train it, or you give them a quick talk on how to use this, but you do not document it. Didn't put it in writing. It's like if it never happened. Head protection, that has to do with hard hats. So you're not requiring it when you need to require it. And many times when OSHA gets to the site and sees the guys without their hard hats, you'll get cited. Another one in fall protection, unprotected sides and edges. What does that mean? There's no guardrails, or the guardrails are missing a mid-rail, for example. So it's a hole for people to fall through. Or we have the issues of unprotected sides and edges, where you think that your workers are away from the edge, but you're allowing them to work closer to the edge, where you're required to actually either have a control zone or a monitor, or to actually erect guardrails. I'm sorry. Guardrails shouldn't be such a big issue. Nowadays, they even make movable, portable guardrails. For those of you that don't know, you can send me an email and I'll send you some of the vendors that I've seen out there bringing this issue to compliance. Aerial lifts, fall protection while in basket. That means because the basket has the guardrails in the aerial lift, like your cherry pickers and so, you have the guardrails and you think, well, that's enough. That's passive fall protection. You know, my worker's not going to fall over because he's wearing, there is guardrails, appropriate guardrails. The catch is that if the manufacturer of that aerial device is saying there is a way for you to tie off to this thing, to wear a harness, to wear personal fall protection, the worker has to wear it. So read your manufacturer's manual and it'll tell you. So most of the aerial lifts nowadays do require people to have fall protection while in the basket. The next one is general safety and health provision. And it says here, inspection by a competent person. And then fall protection again for roofers on low sloped roofs. And the last one is general safety and health provision, recognition, avoidance of unsafe hazards. And what happens with this one is it has to do with the specific construction subsections of the standard. Having competent people on site is super important. Competent person is a term that involves having someone with training and expertise, but more than anything, the authority to stop work if conditions are unsafe. You are mandated to have a competent person anytime you erect scaffolding or you use scaffolding. You're mandated to have a competent person anytime you have fall protection or you are putting people in personal fall protection equipment. The competent person is the one that will tell the guys where to tie off, where to actually install the anchor points, etc., because they know. And with the help of the engineer on site, they'll be able to make decisions as to whether or not they do have the right anchorage for their guys. And the recognition avoidance of unsafe hazards, that means, you show up to the workplace and the first thing you got to do is, what are the hazards that we will encounter today, especially in construction, because their sites vary from one day to another. And it's a great tip. It's a great way to do safety. Meet with your guys before they start work. Guys, that's what I have for you today. I do see some more questions on the chat. You have vendors that provide our system and this shell. I'll send you what I have for general industry. This vendor that I found it through the National Safety Council. So I do not sponsor or endorse anybody that I probably will send you a link to, but the National Safety Council did do their homework as to who they should recommend. And these guys will probably tell you what they have. Fed OSHA. Oh, okay. So I'll send it to you, Nadia, and you can talk to the actual rep because reps are awesome at answering these questions. Thank you, guys. Have a fantastic weekend. I think you guys had great questions today. If you forget to ask a question and you think, oh, I didn't get to ask, please send us an email. And like I said, please log on to our first Friday of the month safety updates with me. And next week, we will have the hazard communication training class. And I would love to see you all there. Yes. Make sure that the rest of your workforce also gets this email so that they get to ask you for classes and raise issues of safety so that you can send them to one of our classes. Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, everyone. Have a fantastic weekend.
Thank you so much, Alba. If anyone needs a certificate, just send me an email and I'll send you one there. But thank you so much, Alba. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next month and have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Well, take care.
Bye.